YouTube, what's going on? It's your boy Buddha back in the building for another Last Cloudia, I'd say general guide video. It's been a long time since we've done one of these, but I am making another break guide, understanding break, for a couple of different reasons. One is because if you just watched my latest unit showcase with Leona, you would know that we started using a great resource that Lake has provided us with his units tool, which goes way deeper into unit details, even giving the break damage per skill. At least that's available to him. There's a couple units that are missing break values, which I imagine will be filled in over time. Two is because once I saw that, I realized that Tweacz had created an actual resource for us just recently, very well put together, I would say, with some funny little graphics I'm sure he found online. So not only do I want to highlight this, but I want to try and break it down because it's kind of confusing. I'm sure a lot of people trying to just read it, especially new players that don't really understand what's going on, will get very confused trying to read it. So I figured, why not do what I do best, plagiarize Tweacz's work and try to break down this guide and explain it for any visual or listening learners, very similar to myself. Another thing we're going to do is build upon this and actually compare some units that I would say are pretty common when you think about breaking and what their actual breaking numerical values end up at the end of calculating break with the formula Tweacz has put together here. So getting a closer look at the guide, we can see it's kind of this pyramid guide to breaking bosses, and probably too confusing guide to breaking bosses, as he put by Tweacz. Love him or hate him, like him or not, there are not a lot of members of the community doing this on their own time, creating these resources that actually help you understand the intricacies of this game. So shout out to the homie as always. So there are two ways to boost your break damage. He talks about break damage received by the boss and break damage of your unit. So there's this first step of understanding that you can't just add a bunch of break percentages together. It has two separate categories as we see here. He then continues to list out the individual ways that you go about doing each one of these. And I'm not going to explain everything here because I don't want to confuse everyone with this. If you want to try and dissect it, you know, feel free. This link will be in the description so you can read through everything. What I want to get straight into is, if we scroll further down, you can see that there is a formula that calculates essentially what your break damage is going to end up at. Now, I've created a spreadsheet in order to make these comparisons, but before we get to that spreadsheet, I want you to pay attention to the first factor of this formula: units' innate break damage. This is a value that is completely invisible to us until players start actually testing units' break damage and watching the break bar for bosses as they use certain skills. And with the help of these testers and Lake consolidating all of this information, we get to his Last Cloudia units tool, where he includes these tested break damage amounts that would technically be hidden. He puts it into a numerical value that we can use to compare units to each other. You can see right here the category for break damage for each one of these abilities or skills. And who we're starting with today is a unit that a lot of people are familiar with, especially if you were around during her collab, and that is Mikasa Ackerman. She's going to be the first unit that we're kind of dissecting in this formula that Tweacz has laid out for us in his resource. I wanted to compare S3s of units since that's typically the higher of the breaking skills. Now that can depend on the unit, like Mechanical Merity. I think her S2 break is higher than the actual S3. However, I chose to pick units that have relatively higher S3 break amounts, and of course S3 is going to be her biggest break skill. Sitting at 210, this is going to be our innate break damage number that starts off the entire calculation. As you can see, I've created my spreadsheet in order to compare these units, starting with the unit's innate break over on that side. We have her S3 at 210. Now what we're going to do is fill out the different categories that Tweacz has laid out, and that is the additive boosts that the hero is able to gain. Dual wield, I gave its own column in our little spreadsheet here, and then of course the boss damage received will be the final factor that we multiply in order to get the final break damage that we are going to be analyzing for these characters. So why did I start out with Mikasa? Well, that's because when she was released with a unique skill of Destroyer, right? This is not a teachable break skill, but it is unique to some units, and it gives, as described, a plus 75% to break. Now, if you look at my little drop-down list of additive boosts, we have Destroyer here at 0.75, just to clarify as we move along through this, because I know as soon as you start dropping formulas and math, some people's heads just start turning upside down. 1 equals 100%. So you make your adjustments from there. As we can see, 0.5 is going to be 50%, and like 1.2 is going to be 120%. So just keep that in mind, but we do have to convert it to this decimal in order to do a pretty clean calculation. So for this additive boost column, we are going to add up the actual multipliers here that are possible to combine together, because just because these are all of the additive boost available, it does not mean they can all be accessed at the same time. There are restrictions to using some of these, right? If we use one, we can't use another, vice versa. So we have to start doing this accordingly and strategically. So we're going to start with 100% or 1 over here, and then we are going to add all of the applicable break boosts in this particular scenario. So we know that she comes with Destroyer, so we're going to include that immediately. Then we are going to include Breaker, and we're going to give all of these units and their comparisons the benefit of the doubt. We did just get a skill called There that does give another plus 50% break boost if the enemy is weak, right? So if the boss is weak to the element you're attacking with, we're going to pretend in this hypothetical scenario that they are weak to thunder. So yes, Mikasa does get the break additive value. Because Mikasa can dual wield and we are allowed to use an axe in this scenario, we can give her both axe high boost and the Cerulean Godforge axe, giving that 50% extra break, and then axe high boost we know gives 25% extra break. Doesn't tell you in the actual skill, but through data mine, we know that it is a 25% increase. Now, because I want to give Mikasa a fighting chance at trying to compare to top breakers that we have in the game, we're also going to forego sword wielding, right? So we're losing all of her actual physical damage output, and we're just trying to min-max the amount of break that she has available to her. So we are dual wielding that Cerulean axe and the iron pipe, giving another 50% break. This was an event exclusive equipment, so we haven't seen it return, but it is available in the game for those who were around for that event. And again, just to give her everything that's available, we're going to pretend Tinkili was on the team and Tinkili used her special, giving Mikasa another 50% additive break. And now we get to the section where we're looking at arcs that give more additive break. There are a couple that give a smaller amount than these three. However, Tweacz mentions these are the three that stand out the most. Phoenix Blow giving 100%, Grana Seas giving that 120%, and then you see I have Psycha times 1, Psycha times 2, Psycha times 3. That's because the arc Psycha Guild gives 50% per typing that the unit equipped with that arc does not share, right? So if Mikasa is a soldier and then we have a fish, machine, and sorcerer on the party, we get 150% break right here. If we have two typings that don't share Mikasa, then we would get 100%, right? So I wanted to make that distinction of how Psycha Guild isn't always 150% break, right? You do have to have a certain amount of typings that the unit does not share. But for our scenarios, we're going to just assume the most potential, right? The 150% that Psycha Guild can provide. But before I pick that, I do just want to point out what's directly above me, and that's that if you run the Loug Zeus UR arcs, those are not additive break boosts. Those are actually going to come into effect when we look at the boss damage received. But this is what I was talking about, where you can't just add all of these together without give and takes. If we run the Loug URs on Mikasa, it does mean that we can't factor in any of these other arc additive boosts. Now, you can do one of these arcs and then maybe like 3 or 2 of these other UR arcs, but that's only applicable to multiplayer scenarios where you can have people come in or have a support come in with the same arc as you. For simplicity's sake, we're just going to give her Psycha Guild, right, as that is the highest additive break boost that you can currently get from an arc. And like I said, given Mikasa the benefit of the doubt, we are going to give her all the stops when it comes to break. So with all of these factors included, that's going to wrap up our additive break boosts. We're going to close out the formula that you can see over here, hit enter. And you can see that with all of those additive boosts, we have times 6, which is 600% altogether in this additive boost step. Now, looking at the dual wield multiplier, if we're single wielding, it's obviously going to be 1. But because dual wield doubles your hit counts, this is an effective 2 multiplier that we have to include when calculating this break damage. And then the final column is the boss damage received, or the boss break damage received. And this has to do with this column of numbers. While it can get confusing, just know that things like the Loug Zeus UR break factor and Mia's Bolt, which was recently included, are just a separate multiplier from the additive boosts, and they have to be calculated accordingly. To give a quick breakdown here, we have up to 4 Loug URs in the party, right? If we're running multiplayer, you can potentially have each unit with 4 Loug Zeus URs, but in our hypothetical scenario, that possibility is already out of the window because we are running Psycha Guild, which means even if we were doing multiplayer, the best we could manage would be 3 UR arcs. But let's not go there, right? Let's just pretend you're running PvE story, no multiplayer, no online. But you do decide to bring a Loug Zeus UR because you have it available and you want to take advantage of all of the break damage that's possible to you. So we're going to do the same thing that we started with the additive boosts. We start with 1, and then we are going to add the sum of both of the effects here, right? We are running 1 Loug Zeus UR, so that's an extra 50% on top of this multiplier. And then let's also throw in Mia. Let's say you are running Mia with the Loug Zeus UR arc and you cast her Bolt before you start breaking, giving you that extra 50% multiplier, which gives us another ×2 to boss damage received. Now we have all of the factors that we need to calculate the total amount of break damage that Mikasa is going to be doing with 1S3, right? With all of those boosts that we added on top, with her dual wielding, and with the extra damage received buffs, we're ending up with a total of 5,040 break damage. Now you might be looking at that and saying, oh, that doesn't seem so bad. Seems like a big number, 5,000, right? Obviously we don't have a visual to compare that to because I'm too lazy to actually go run that in game and see what it looks like. But what we can do is start to compare to get a better image of what units are actual breakers and what units aren't. Moving over to our cream of the crop, one of my favorite current units being Murren. Now, I'm already spoiling it in this tab here, but if we go back to the Lake's unit tool, find Murren down towards the bottom of this list, scroll over, we can see that the S3, he's got Spiral Dasher, has a break damage of 306. Again, you might be saying, oh, well, 200 to 300 doesn't seem like that much. Well, we're about to see how much of a difference that actually makes. We're going to start with the same process as before. We're going to do 1 plus the sum of everything we're able to give him from this additive boost list. Now, the first thing obviously is Breaker. This actually comes in Murren's kit. And then we might say, oh, let's throw on Destroyer. Not possible. Murren doesn't come with this skill innately, and it's not a teachable skill yet. So, oh wow, Mikasa's already got an edge on the additive break boosts than Murren. Let's just keep on moving. We can definitely teach him there if available, and we're going to pretend like the boss is weak to fire in this scenario. We're going to give him Axe Boost and or Axe High Boost and Cerulean Axe. Because we're going to be dual wielding with Murren, right? Because to lose that dual wield multiplier, is going to be huge, as we're going to see in my next example. Murren does have 50% extra break damage on his paid equip, so we're going to include that, but we could also forego his damage boosts and use the Iron Pipe if you don't have his paid equipped, if you're going strictly for break, so we're definitely going to be including that. We're going to be treating him the same as Mikasa, giving him Tinkili's special boost and giving him the 150% add-on from Psycha Guild when those conditions are met. So here we go. Close that up, and we see that he has the additive boost of 5.25, which is 0.75 less than Mikasa, right? 75% less, because we do not have Destroyer able to be put on Murren here. Because we are dual wielding, we're obviously going to give him the ×2 multiplier, and then we're going to give him the same treatment, right? Same scenario, same team comp. We're going to be running one Loug Zeus UR on the team, and then we're also going to be running Mia and her break boost with her guided bolt. Close that up. How much damage are you doing with an S3, Murren? Oh, 6,426. Just about a 30% increase to the amount of break that Murren does over Mikasa. And while that may not seem like a crazy amount, I mean, you're looking at Mikasa's S3 fully kitted out, breaking a boss, let's just say 30% of the way there. Murren's coming in, breaking the boss to 50% of that break bar, right? So this is a very significant break amount, and why Murren stands out as one of the breaker units that we consider, right? One of the top breakers of the game. Because this number compared to Mikasa's number, this is a significant increase from 5,000 to almost 6,500. And then finally, we are going to look at a single wield breaker and providing the explanation and mathematical evidence of why you just cannot compete with units that break using dual wield versus units that don't. And in order to visualize that, we're going to be looking at Shift Lanceveil, who is a unit that already has a ton working for him as a single wield breaker that other units aren't going to have because they just don't have the same things built within them. So unfortunately, you can see the innate break here being 180. That's because Lake's units tool does not have a documented break damage for the S3, right? Supreme Thunder right here. We only have the S2 sitting at 180. So that's the number I decided to pull in order to make this initial calculation. But with that, we can start our additive boost formula. Same as the others, we start with 1 plus the sum of all additive boosts available. He does have breaker built within him. Destroyer is not teachable, and he does not come with Destroyer, so we're skipping over that, but we can teach him there, and we're going to pretend like the boss is weak to Thunder, just like Mikasa. Axe High Boost and Cerulean Axe we are actually going to skip over, because Lanceveil does get 200% extra additive break when you're only wielding one sword, as you can see I listed down here. So this 75% combined additive boost is a no-go. However, if I do recall, his paid sword does come with 50% break, so we can throw that on there. We are going to be giving him the biggest boost that Psycha Guild can offer, just like these other units. Tinkili's special is also going to be included here. As I mentioned, his trait 1 gives him a 200% additive break boost when you are wielding only one sword. And that's going to do it for the additive boost that we can potentially give Lanceveil. Now, a lot of people see that 200% number and think it's going to be this huge deal. Well, let's see what he ends up with in the additive boost column. Ends up with a 6.5. So he does have the highest amount of additive boost when you're adding up these break amounts. Remember, Mikasa ended up with like 600% or a 6 right here. But here's the kicker. While our previous two units had a ×2 multiplier for this dual wield multiplier, Lanceveil does not have that. He only gets 1, which does not affect anything, literally, when we're going to see this final calculation. Boss damage received, we're given the same treatment, so we start with 1 plus the sum of 1 Loug Zeus UR as well as Mia's guided bolt, giving that ×2 to boss damage received, boss break damage received. We calculated and we see 2340. Talk about despicable. This is less than half of what Mikasa's bringing to the table. And you might be saying, oh, well, Buddha, you use the S2, which only has 180 break. Let's just pretend that Lanceveil's S3 does more than Murren's innate break damage and give it 350. We're still looking at a total break amount that's less than Mikasa's boosted break damage. So this is the power of the dual wield multiplier. This is why it is so prevalent. All of those added boosts giving him the biggest additive boost amount amounts to nothing. This is the numerical image that allows us to differentiate what units are quote-unquote good at breaking when you want to go with a breaking strategy, and we're able to make these calculations thanks to the resources provided by Lake, by Tweacz. So again, I just want to thank them. This video has gone on long enough. I hope I didn't confuse anyone. Obviously, I could have done just a video of all three of these units breaking a boss in battle, but I figured why not use these resources that have been provided to us in order to break it down in a different way that might help some players understand like what makes an actual breaker. They could have all of the additive boosts in the world, but that unit's innate break is the real differentiator right off the gate, right? So don't get twisted, right? Don't get confused if a unit is released with Destroyer and you're thinking they have so much break with this 75% increase, because that can just not be the case if they come into the game with a very, very low innate break amount. Hopefully this helps someone out there. Hopefully this was a fun little breakdown for you guys to see, putting actual numbers behind the break values, which is something we haven't been able to do up until now, thanks to Lake's resources, thanks to Tweacz resources. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let me know if I lost you along the way, or if this was able to provide some clarity and change your perspective on how to analyze these units when thinking about break. Always love to see your feedback. Like, subscribe, bell notifications. If you're new to the channel, if you're new to Last Cloudia, make sure you turn on all noties so that you don't miss a video when I post it. You won't be out of the loop. And with all that being said, y'all know what we say, work hard, play harder. See you in the next video.